All right, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about something I think we've all felt. You learn and learn and learn, but your life, well, it doesn't really change. Why is that? The answer, it turns out, is all about turning what you know into what you do.
You know the feeling, right? You read the books, you listen to the podcasts, you take the courses, you're soaking up all this great information. But then you look around and nothing's different. It's like all that knowledge just vanishes. Well, today, we're digging into exactly why that happens and how to fix it.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at what I call the forgetting problem. Then, we'll get into the absolute core of this whole thing, the difference between input and output. After that, we'll touch on a little bit of the science, how our memory actually works. And finally, we'll get super practical with two amazing output tools, teaching and a smarter way to take notes.
Okay, so let's start with that all-too-familiar feeling. You finish an incredible book, you're buzzing with ideas, you feel like you could change the world, and then a week later, you can barely remember the main points. It really does feel like our brains are just leaky buckets, right? But believe it or not, there's a very good reason for it.
And that reason really comes down to the balance, or for most of us, the imbalance between input and output. See, we spend almost all of our time on input, just consuming information. But the real secret, the key to making things stick and actually creating change, is all about the output. It's about using it.
Let's just make sure we're on the same page. Input is pretty much passive. It's reading, listening, watching. Output, on the other hand, is active. It's speaking, writing, building something, applying an idea. You can consume knowledge all day long, but you don't truly own it. You don't really learn it until you start doing something with it.
And if you want to see a wild example of this in action, just look at Shion Kawasawa, the author whose ideas we're exploring today. I mean, his input is huge. He reads over 20 books a month, but his output is just staggering. We're talking 2 to 3 books of his own per year, daily social media posts, writing for hours every day, and giving lectures every month. He doesn't just preach this stuff, he lives it.
So why should you care? Why does this matter so much? Because output is the only thing that actually changes your reality. Plain and simple. Watching a workout video doesn't make you stronger. Doing the exercises does. Output is what takes a fuzzy idea and makes it crystal clear in your mind. It's what leads to real results.
All right, now for the cool part. Let's look at the science of why output is the magic ingredient. It all has to do with how our brains are literally wired to decide what's worth remembering and what's just noise.
Let me ask you a quick question. Can you remember what you ate for dinner on the 3rd of last month? I'm guessing probably not, right? I mean, unless it was your birthday or some big anniversary dinner. That's your brain's natural filter just doing its job, automatically deciding what's important and what can be tossed out.
So here's how that filter actually works, in a nutshell. Any new piece of information enters a part of your brain called the hippocampus, and it basically sits there on probation for about 2 to 4 weeks. Now, if during that time you use that information, if you output it, your brain flags it as important. It says, oh, okay, we need this, and moves it over to the temporal lobe for long-term storage. And if you don't use it, poof, it gets deleted to make room for new stuff.
So you can think of it like this. Every time you talk about something you learned, or write about it, or try to apply it, you are literally sending a direct signal to your own brain. You're saying, hey, pay attention to this. This is important. Don't you dare forget it.
Okay, so we know we need to output. That's clear. But what's the best way to do it? Well, let's talk about what might just be the single most powerful learning technique on the planet.
Think about it. Of all the different ways you could use new information, what do you think is the absolute #1, hands-down, most effective method for burning it into your brain forever? The answer is actually surprisingly simple, but it is incredibly powerful.
And the answer is teaching it to someone else. It's not even close. Get this, research from the U.S. National Training Labs shows that if you just passively listen to a lecture, your knowledge retention is about 5%. A week later, it's mostly gone. But if you learn something with the intention of teaching it to others, that retention rate explodes to 90%. That's not a small difference. That is a game changer.
So why is teaching so incredibly effective? Well, because you simply can't explain something well to another person until you truly, deeply understand it yourself. It forces you to organize all the messy facts in your head into a coherent story. It immediately shows you where the gaps in your own knowledge are. You're not just memorizing, you're understanding. It really is a simple but profound truth. The best way to learn anything is to teach it. So next time you want to master something new, don't just learn it for you. Learn it like you're going to have to explain it to a friend tomorrow.
Okay, so teaching is the undisputed champion of output. But what else have we got? Well, another fantastic tool is simply taking smart notes. But here's the trick. It's all about choosing the right kind of note-taking for the right kind of task.
And I love this analogy the author uses. Think about it in two ways. You've got the bird's eye view and the insect's eye view. For the bird's eye view, when you're brainstorming, trying to be creative, seeing the whole picture, go analog. Grab a piece of paper, a notebook, a whiteboard, let your ideas run wild. But for the insect's eye view, when you need to zoom in, organize the details, and execute a plan, that's when you go digital.
So a great rule of thumb is use paper to create and use digital tools to organize and execute. Digital is perfect when you need to structure your ideas, when you need to search for something you wrote 6 months ago, or when you need to share your work with somebody else. And this all brings us right back to where we started, to this one central, powerful idea. Knowledge, by itself, is just potential. It's just sitting there. Real, actual change in your life, in your career, in your health, it doesn't come from what you know. It comes from what you do with what you know.
So, I'm going to leave you with a direct challenge. Not just a thought, but a question to act on. What is the very first thing you will output today? Don't just let these ideas sit in your head. Tell a friend one thing you learned from this. Write down a one-sentence summary. Just do one small, tiny thing to turn this knowledge into action. It starts now.